Iran hasn't invaded a neighboring country in modern history. And that's precisely why the world is afraid. A state that can shut down 20% of the world's oil without crossing a border, strike through 4 proxy armies across the Middle East, and move crude prices. $14 with one threat. The real reason everyone fears Iran isn't its army. It's a chain reaction. No one knows how to stop. Every day, nearly 20 million barrels of oil, 1/5 of the world's supply, squeeze through the Strait of Hormuz, a channel so narrow that a single incident can ripple across continents. In 2011, when Iranian officials threatened to block the passage in response to US sanctions, oil prices reacted in real time. Brent crude jumped $14 almost overnight, hitting $108 a barrel, and futures markets began to price in the fear of a supply shock. There was no missile fired, no ship sunk, just the weight of a credible threat. 8 years later, the world watched as tensions surged after the US killed Qasem Soleimani, the architect of Iran's regional strategy. Iran's response was not a conventional military strike, but a warning. The strait could be closed. The market's reaction was immediate. Brent surged to $115, futures spreads widened, and governments tapped into strategic reserves to calm traders. The mere possibility of disruption, amplified by satellite images of new missile batteries along the coast, was enough to send insurers and shipping companies scrambling. As US and European sanctions tightened again from 2020 onward, Iranian officials floated new threats: a $2 million transit fee per vessel, selective passage, even total closure if economic pressure continued. Tanker traffic through Hormuz dipped, and oil stabilized at a higher baseline, $108 a barrel with a persistent risk premium built in. Each time, the world paid not for actual war, but for the uncertainty that Iran could trigger a chain reaction. The Strait of Hormuz is less a battlefield than a global pressure point, one where rhetoric alone can cost the world billions in a single week. The Iran-Iraq War left a scar measured not just in territory lost or won, but in the staggering toll on human life. Nearly 1 million Iranians were killed or wounded between 1980 and 1988. Figures drawn from national epidemiologic surveys and government records. On some fronts, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, still young and loosely organized, took 30% of the casualties while making up just a fraction of the total force. The average age of the dead was 23. In the aftermath, commanders faced a hard truth. Mass infantry assaults had delivered only devastation. Senior IRGC leaders, many of them now at the core of Iran's military doctrine, began to speak openly about the futility of sacrificing lives for ground that could not be held. Instead, the IRGC retooled itself for survival and retaliation. Missile power became the answer to a simple, brutal calculus: how to deter stronger enemies without repeating the bloodletting of the 1980s. Today, Iran's arsenal includes more than 3,000 ballistic missiles. The Shahab-3, with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers, stands alongside the Fateh 110 and its longer-range Zolfaghar and Dezful variants. In 2023, Tehran unveiled the Fateh, a hypersonic glide vehicle claimed to reach speeds above Mach 5, designed to evade even the most advanced missile defense systems. But the real insurance policy lies underground. Across the Khamenei, Shahid Bakari, and Kashan regions, reinforced bunkers run more than 30 meters deep, sheltering hundreds of launchers and command centers. These so-called missile cities are built to survive the first strike and guarantee Iran can strike back. Major General Hossein Salami, the current IRGC commander, summed up the doctrine in a single phrase: "We do not seek war, but we have prepared for its arrival." For Iran, survivable strike power is not an option. It is a response forged in the memory of a generation lost. The hardware is only the surface. The logic runs deeper, anchoring a strategy that prizes endurance, credible retaliation, and the ability to escalate far beyond its borders. Qasem Soleimani built a network that lets Iran threaten its enemies without ever sending its own soldiers across a border. At the heart of this system are four main pillars: Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, and a core of loyalist units in Syria. Each group is large enough to fight a war on its own. Hezbollah fields up to 30,000 fighters. The PMF in Iraq numbers as many as 200,000. The Houthis command 40,000, and Syrian forces supported by Iran total over 100,000. These are not just local militias. They are trained, supplied, and often coordinated by Iranian advisors, many of whom once reported directly to Soleimani before his assassination in January 2020. This web of proxies acts as a force multiplier. When pressure rises, whether from sanctions or military threats, Iran can activate any node in the network. In 2019, after Soleimani's Quds force was blamed for a missile and drone strike on Saudi oil facilities, the world saw how quickly these groups could disrupt global markets. Insurance rates for tankers surged, and oil prices spiked by nearly $20 a barrel in days. The message was clear. Iran's reach extends from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, and it can strike indirectly at multiple points without exposing itself to direct retaliation. What makes this architecture so effective is its resilience. If one group is hit, the others remain intact, able to launch rockets, sabotage pipelines, or threaten shipping lanes. The actual numbers, tens of thousands of fighters, hundreds of short-range missiles, and a steady flow of Iranian-made drones, are only part of the story. The real power lies in the uncertainty. No adversary can ever be sure which front will erupt next, or how quickly a local flare-up could cascade into a global crisis. Soleimani's design was never about conquest. It was about building a system where Iran could always raise the cost of confrontation, even from a distance. The Natanz enrichment facility, buried beneath layers of concrete and secrecy, became a symbol of Iran's nuclear ambiguity after a string of sabotage incidents in 2020 and 2022. Explosions and fires rocked the site, widely attributed to covert operations, yet each setback was met with a technical leap forward. By early 2021, Iran announced it had resumed enrichment well above the 3.67% cap set by the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Within months, new cascades of advanced centrifuges pushed output to 20% purity, far closer to weapons grade than the world had seen since the deal's signing in 2015. The JCPOA had been built on clear limits: 3.67% enrichment, 300 kilogram stockpile, and continuous IAEA inspection. That architecture collapsed in May 2018, when the United States unilaterally withdrew and reimposed sanctions. Iran's response was methodical. It breached the cap, installed more powerful centrifuges, and expanded research at both Natanz and Fordow. The International Atomic Energy Agency, led by Director General Rafael Grossi, issued a series of increasingly urgent reports. In his 2024 statement, Grossi warned, "Iran's enrichment activities have moved beyond the limits set by the JCPOA, raising the risk of a nuclear breakout." The ambiguity is by design. No one can say with certainty how close Iran is to a weapon, or how quickly it could cross the threshold if it chose. This uncertainty acts as a multiplier in every crisis. Each technical advance at Natanz, each IAEA warning, injects volatility into global markets and diplomatic channels alike. The world is left to calculate not just the odds of a nuclear test, but the chain reaction that could follow: a panic in energy markets, a scramble for sanctions or strikes, and the spectre of escalation that no one can contain. When Saudi Aramco's processing plant was hit in September 2019, 5 million barrels a day, about 5% of global oil supply, went offline in hours. The shock rippled through every trading floor from London to Shanghai. Brent crude spiked by $8, but the real pain was in the freight and insurance markets. Economist Robert Fingas points out that rerouting tankers around Africa, if the Strait of Hormuz were fully closed, would add up to $2 billion a day in extra costs. China, which now buys 35% of Iran's oil exports, would face the heaviest blow, but the knock-on effects would land everywhere. The International Energy Agency's models show that a 30-day disruption could push oil prices up by $15 to $20 a barrel and contract global GDP by 0.5%. Even a week-long partial closure would tack $10 billion onto shipping bills. The world's wallets are chained to the Gulf's stability, and Iran holds the key. Sanctions forced Iran to turn inward, spawning a defense sector that thrives on unpredictability. Dr. Arash Riahi, a leading drone specialist, points to the Shahed 129, a medium-altitude, long-endurance drone now rolling off assembly lines at a rate of 300 to 400 units per year. These drones, once a novelty, now saturate conflicts from Yemen to Ukraine, blurring the line between state and proxy warfare. Meanwhile, Iran's cyber teams have moved from denial-of-service attacks to Stuxnet-style malware, targeting industrial control systems across the Gulf. The deeper story runs underground, literally. Missile and electronics factories burrowed 30 meters beneath Qom and Kashan keep production hidden from satellites and airstrikes. The IRGC's budget has surged to a quarter of national defense spending, fueling a toolkit built for ambiguity. No one outside Tehran can say how many drones, missiles, or cyber weapons are ready to launch, or where the next escalation might begin. The result? A world left to guess, and to fear what it cannot see. Iran's real power isn't tanks at a border, it's the chain reaction set off by a missile in Hormuz, a drone attack, or a proxy strike. As global markets hinge on narrow straits and shadow networks, every escalation risk grows. In this system, instability is the ultimate weapon.